What's going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with, Ryan Hallam again? Hallam, what is this, man? Are we hypnotizing people or something? They keep putting us together on these live streams. I don't know why. Oh, wait, I do. Because we're family members, and we're helping you always dominate. Always. No other option. What's going on, Ryan? How are you?
Not bad for a Monday. I got to start out real quick with a shout out to our own Rick Wolf. It's his birthday today. 29 years young again this year for Rick Wolf. So wherever you are, sir, hope you're having a good day. I'm having a good day.
Ryan, he's 25, Ryan. He's 25. You got to know your boss's birthday, okay?
Damn it. Oh, wait, I just got an email.
This is Ryan Hallam's last live stream. So let's make
I have to go now. Actually.
No, but seriously, happy birthday to the Wolfman, president of Fantasy Alarm, Rick Wolf. So I tell Rick, hey, keep dominating, no lunch breaks, and there are never any lunch breaks for him or any of us on the FA staff. The draft guide is out right now, 1997. What are you waiting for? Ryan, I just want to shake everybody because if you're just starting out, you're late, but you're not too late, though. And I just want everybody to get their draft plans. We got our living draft guide right now on the site, fantasyalarm.com/NFL draft guide. So with that, I'll say this with you, Ryan. How's everything been on your end, man? Because the news cycle just crushes us every single day, it seems like.
Yeah, it's basically insanity between trying to cover all the sports that are back right now. It certainly keeps us busy pretty much all day. It's been a little better. We have baseball almost came all the way back the other day. We almost had a day where every team played, but of course then the Cardinals mucked it up again. So they're, I think, supposed to play again on Friday. I don't know how they're going to get through 60 games now, but it's nice to have everything back. The NBA is doing well, NHL doing well, and we're all crossing those fingers for the NFL.
Yes, we are. And speaking of NFL, let's talk about a piece of news that took place on Friday late afternoon, and that was the Washington football team releasing Derrius Guice. So now, and we know that with Derrius Guice, it's a bigger issue than fantasy football, but this is where we come in because now we're looking at average draft position, which you can find right on our site. So when thinking of it that way, it's who's next in line now? Because there are a few options, Ryan. There's Adrian Peterson. There's Antonio Gibson, and then there is, of course, Peyton Barber as well. So are you attracted to any of these guys any more than you were before? Because now a new opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, I'm a little more attracted to Antonio Gibson, and Adrian. That's just as terrible as it is. Adrian Peterson just will never go away. I mean, none of them are going to be league winners by any stretch of the imagination. I thought Gibson was kind of a fringe guy before this news. I think this is going to force him into a little bit bigger role. I mean, coming in as a rookie, we've talked many times about these rookies and not having training, regular training camp, not having preseason. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a struggle. And that's where Peterson comes in, man. He's been on the team for a few years. Somehow he still has some tread in the tires. He's not great. But if he's a starting running back, he'll have some value, a flex value, bye week and injury insurance on your bench. It's I can't believe it, but I think Peterson is going to have some value this year.
Yes, he's old. He's 35, but at the same time, he rushed for nearly 900 yards last year. And when you're talking about durability, where it's always been against running backs by the time they hit the old age of 28, still older than Rick Wolf, by the way, then all of a sudden, people don't want running backs anymore. However, Adrian Peterson has been pretty healthy over his last 2 seasons, missing just a game. I talked about this on ADP TV here on fantasyalarm.com, really going over those trends when it comes to average draft positions. John and Pemba has had to deal with me and the craziness of my videos, and I thank John and Pemba, who is also producing the program, and with me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio tonight, 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern for Alarm After Hours, your secondary fantasy alarm show on that channel. But Ryan, something else about Gibson here, and this is very funny. The first thing I do is when I saw this news, I immediately went to Yahoo, very generous with position eligibility. And for some reason, I thought, does this guy qualify both at running back and receiver? Because in Memphis, he was active in both, and that makes him more versatile. And with the lack of options that the Washington football team has, he could be a factor in multiple areas, and that right there is going to lift his draft stock. I think we're going to see even more upward trajectory over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Is he eligible in both? I don't know.
He's not.
He's not. Okay.
He's not.
Okay. I don't know if they grant eligibility in fantasy football during the year, but that certainly would help. Yeah, I mean, if he's a running back, we talked many times. It's not that deep there, so he certainly will come into play for bye weeks and things like that. Maybe a flex guy. Who knows? And you have to see if guys stay healthy like they did last year. So there's certainly a chance for Gibson to come in and help your team. I'm going to guess that his ADP in the next week is going to go up too far, as things normally do. We react to news a little much. And also Bryce Love, I've seen him go in some drafts as well. I took him in like the 22nd round of a big draft. He's younger than Peterson. Peyton Barber, he couldn't get out of Ronald Jones's way. So I
couldn't get out of my own way taking that run game last year. And this is something that I thought I was being so smart by doing, is being like, okay, instead of investing in either Ronald Jones or Peyton Barber, I'm just going to invest in both of them. 10th and 11th round picks back to back. Boom, I have my run game. And let me just tell you, I shouldn't play the lottery. I was wrong more than I was right in that regard, Hallam. I don't know if you faced that kind of same situation or you have in the past, but man, I felt like I was striking out almost every single time, starting the wrong guy, because let's face it, unless I'm in total dire straits, unless I'm that desperate, I'm not starting both of them.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And then you're trying to pick the one, and most of the time, like you said, you're picking the wrong one. I think people might deal with that with the 49ers this year with Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman. I have a feeling there's going to be a handful of games where Coleman is going to be the better choice. I think Mostert will be most of the time, but I think there's going to be 3 or 4 weeks during the season where you're going to have Coleman be the guy. And I think every year there's that frustration somewhere in the NFL, and I totally feel your pain on the Bucs last year, and Washington too.
Yep, I have 2 shares, by the way, of Tevin Coleman. 1 share of Mostert, but 2 of Tevin Coleman. I am very, very into Tevin Coleman, especially where he's being drafted right now. I've seen him go in that 9th, 10th, 11th round area, and how can you ask for more? I mean, a great line that he's running behind here, maybe active in the passing game a little bit more. We'll have to see. And that's something, Mostert, we saw them in spurts produce those running backs in San Francisco last year. So this year now, at least I have a share of Mostert, but I've got multiple of Coleman as well. I wanted some exposure to that 49er run game, Ryan. And not just because you and I have hosted a zillion things together over the last few weeks. It's because I legitimately loved the draft stock when it came to Tevin Coleman, and I'm still going to love it. And I don't think it's going to go up much at all between now and the start of the season.
No, especially with Mostert getting that contract redone, I think most people are going to feel he's going to be the guy and Coleman will be the 2. But like you said, the offensive line is great. They are still a run-first team, so there's still going to be room and use for Coleman for sure.
Yes. Now, Ryan, let's shift it over to the tight ends, because you and I talked a lot about quarterbacks on Friday. Let's talk a little tight ends today, because I've been making my auction plan, and I have never, not one time, have gone in on Travis Kelce. Not because I don't like Travis Kelce. I love Travis Kelce. Everyone loves Travis Kelce. That's why I feel like I can't go for him, because normally, especially with my auction plan, I only really budget a few bucks for tight ends. I have splurged a little bit more when it comes to my auction budget, but for a Travis Kelce, you're spending at least $30 on the guy. And if you put him out first, let's just say, I have a feeling everybody's going to be so antsy to bid that they're just going to bid on him. And this guy could go all the way up to maybe even in the late 30s. I think he ends up going in the mid-30s in most auctions, but that's a lot, man, considering you can get starting tight ends for only, $1 to $3, some of them.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I can't think of when a time that I got Kelce in an auction. I like him definitely more in snake drafts than in auctions. Like you said, you can get even like 6, 7, 8 to best tight ends for just a couple dollars, and to spend that kind of money on Kelce, and he's great. Like you said, there's no doubt about it. He's very consistent. You know what you're going to get. But that's a lot to throw out, for your tight end in an auction. It's so much easier in a snake draft. All right, I used a late first round pick, or I used an early second round pick. Then I used 30% of my budget in an auction. It just seems a little much for me.
It depends where you are in your snake drafts. Let's move it over to snake drafts for a second, because if you are on the left side, meaning if you are picks 1 through 5, let's just say, there's a chance you can get a George Kittle towards the end. I have not been in that position yet, Ryan. And I'm not talking tight end bonus leagues. I'm talking just normal fantasy football leagues that I have not gotten that opportunity. Maybe, just maybe, especially if I have, let's just say, the second pick because I'm cursed and never get the first pick ever in fantasy football drafts. Maybe coming back around in the second round, I will pull the trigger on George Kittle. What about you? Where do you stand on that? Okay, I should have known.
I'm still waiting for the contract, Ben Steve. Still waiting for the contract. Honestly, I very rarely pick one of the top two. I did in Scott Fish, but like you said, that's a tight end premium league. That's different. In regular fantasy football leagues, I rarely, pay the stock that it takes to get Kelsey or Kittle. I would need to take Kittle in the second round. I can't personally take him in the first round. I've seen him go. I can't do that. And most of the time, I'll do it more in mock drafts. Obviously, it doesn't count. And anytime that I take a tight end in the first 2 rounds, I always feel like my running backs are soft. And that's always the problem for me. That's why I normally don't do it. I see, Kelsey and Kittle generally go in the second, early third at the latest for Kittle. Personally, I can't do it.
I'm more open to doing it in those leagues where there are only 2 wide receivers starting, especially if it's 2 wide receiver and 1 flex. And I don't love being in those leagues. And some will be like, well, what if there are 2 flexes? I still like the 3 wide receiver starting leagues better. But if I'm in a league where just 2 are starting, 2 wide receivers, I don't have to prioritize them as much. That way, let's just say I'm in that 1 through 5 area and I get someone at 2, like a Saquon Barkley. Then come back and I get a Kittle and then maybe someone like an Allen Robinson. That's an amazing recipe. That's a combination that I want on my team. At that point, I'm more open to doing it. Let me ask you, at that point, when Kelsey and Kittle are gone, where exactly are you targeting Zach Ertz and Mark Andrews? Who are you prioritizing between the two? Because that's also become a hard decision, especially after Marquise Goodwin opted out and Alshon Jeffrey isn't healthy. It makes me want to go to Zach Ertz. However, I love Mark Andrews so much, especially with what we saw last year with more tight ends in the mix, no more Hayden Hurst. Where do you stand?
I'm definitely Andrews, easily to me over Ertz. Ertz has snuck back up with the Goodwin opt-out and the Jeffrey injury. Because if you remember last year, if you really look at last year, Ertz was nothing. For about the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season, not nothing, but not Ertz. It was a point where he was borderline not startable if the tight end position was better. And as everyone got hurt, they started to go to him more. And even Dallas Goedert in the middle of the season was getting more targets than him. With the injuries, I think it bumps Ertz back a little bit. But I definitely like Andrews better. Lamar Jackson, it's like he only thinks that Andrews is the only guy out there sometimes, because they don't throw that much, and Andrews still ends up with 10 targets, and Jackson threw it 17 times. I mean, so to me, it's easy Andrews. He gets more touchdowns, assuming, things run the same as last year, which I assume they will, where I think Ertz has got a lot more competition for those looks in Philadelphia.
Does it concern you at all, though, that Andrews, he is diabetic? And we are in COVID times, and he is going to play through it as much as he can, but that hasn't stopped me at all from grabbing Mark Andrews. What about you? Does that deter you?
No, I mean, I would say he would have opted out if it was a really big concern. I think that deadline has passed. So I think we go on the assumption at this point that the guys that are in there are in there. There always could be a risk, like Lorenzo Cain in baseball opted out in the middle here. That could happen. But I'm going off the assumption that all systems go at this point, and I'm definitely all aboard the Andrews train.
Yep, so we talked about the first few tight ends that are being drafted. Then you have a big decision to make, everybody out there, as we're talking about tight end strategy here. It is draft season, and that's what we're talking about here. That's why you got to get the guide and get with us. Your family is always with you. That's not just a saying. It's reality. We have chats for a reason. You go down a little bit, you see other tight ends such as Darren Waller. Do you think Darren Waller, even though the Raiders added a little bit more Ruggs, they want to make Jacobs a little bit more active in the passing game? We'll have to see how that happens. Where do you stand on Darren Waller? Because I've gotten him in the 5th and 6th round in best balls. I also have a share or two in redraft as well. I just love the value so much. And I'm normally one that waits on the tight end. But when I'm seeing Darren Waller still there, I think he can have a repeat of last season.
Yeah, I totally agree. He faded a little bit down the stretch, and yeah, the Raiders added a little bit, but I also expect their offense to be a little bit better this year. I mean, getting Ruggs out there and Lynn Bowden and all that, what that does is also takes the defense away from Waller. By the 4th week of the season, they figured out we don't have to guard anyone else out here. This is the only guy who can catch. So right. I think that's going to really help him. He's going to have to deal. I think he's going to deal with more linebackers and safeties this year. Who generally guard the tight end. Not everybody. He was being triple teamed at some point because the only other guy out there was Tyrell Williams. He stinks.
See, and that's the thing, Ryan. He doesn't stink.
He does stink.
No, he doesn't stink. He was hurt last year, and he was stupidly playing hurt. He had a hurt heel. He had plantar fasciitis, and with that, the only way that you can heal is by not being on your darn feet. And every single week, because I had him in a decent amount of places, when you're seeing that he's very questionable most weeks, especially down the stretch, just bench him already. Just let him heal up. I know you don't really have that many receivers, but just bench him then, because that's an injury that has no true timetable. Trust me, you know me, I'm an NBA guy. That happens all the time. Ask Julius Randle about it a few years ago. He was playing through it. What happened? He stunk. He sat out a few weeks, almost a month. Yeah, it cost him almost a month. He came back, and he was a beast. He was a force. He was helping fantasy players everywhere. That's what they needed to do with Tyrell Williams, and I'm sitting there being like, just bench him, Gruden. Just bench him.
All right, I won't say he stinks. He's a touchdown or nothing. He's not a very consistent guy. He's 2 for 88 in a touchdown one week and 3 catches for 35 yards the next week. Is that more accurate? Will you accept that?
Yes, shades of Stephon Diggs right there too. Yes.
But yes. Long story short, yes, I like Waller a lot. I kind of prioritize him over Hurts, to be honest.
And I don't hate you for it totally or anything.
I hope not.
I don't hate you at all, Ryan. Right, I talk to you more than I talk to my wife at this point, okay? If that's where the pecking order has become when it comes to power rankings, let's just say, Ryan. So always much love for you. But Ryan, I'll just say this, and by the way, for everybody that's wondering about Ruggs, yes, I do know that he did hurt himself helping a friend move, Ryan, and that's the thing, man. I lived in the city in D.C. I did the U-Haul thing one time, and I said I would never do it again. You open up the penny saver, boom, cheap movers. That's what you could find. Good values. We're all about good values, and good values are cheap movers, and especially if you're a professional athlete, you should be hiring some movers to help you out there, and he is fully recovered from what I have read in reports. So he is there, so that is another target there for the Raiders. Where do you stand on Hunter Henry? Because he's the most confusing to me, and part of it is because, as we know, there could very well 5 weeks into the season be a quarterback change. Tyrod Taylor likely to start the season as a starting quarterback. Justin Herbert 5 weeks in, he can be the guy. Does that concern you at all when it comes to players on the Chargers and specifically Henry?
Very much. Yeah, it concerns me very much. There's the only guy that I'm really into this year on the Chargers is Eckler. The rest of the team, I've never been a huge Keenan Allen fan. I feel like he's overdrafted. And Hunter Henry, if you really look at his stats, one, he gets hurt a lot, and two, he had that one half a season where he caught a lot of touchdowns, and we've been drafting him off of that ever since. His numbers aren't that impressive if we really look at them, and the fact that he gets hurt all the time. He's one that I am very happy to watch someone else draft this year. I really want no part of him. I think Tyrod Taylor is not a very good quarterback. I think he's just a placeholder for Justin Herbert, and I don't know what to expect from Justin Herbert. So I think the Chargers are going to struggle to score some points this year. And Henry, I may have him ranked in my top 10 tight ends, but not somebody I'm after whatsoever.
Yeah, he's not an active target of mine either. He drops, and I'm all of a sudden paying non-starters price, so he drops a couple of rounds, and let's just say he's there. I'm sitting there at the end of the 8th, so that's just starters value. Beginning of the 9th, then maybe, and I don't have a tight end, then sure. For most players, for me, value supersedes all. There are certain players that I just don't want, period. But then there are other players that I'm not actively targeting. Someone who I am targeting a little bit more, and this is another guy a bit banged up last year, Evan Engram. And I know with a lot of people thinking that, and I know that you've written articles regarding this with the Giants, that we didn't see a fully healthy Giants team last year. And now you can take it from one mindset that, oh, well, the Giants have all these options now. There's not going to be enough to go around. Or you can take it from the others that the defenses are going to have a lot to cover no matter who they play, and Evan Engram should be able to get some red zone looks. If you're telling me I can get this guy in the 8th round, I've already have 2 shares of Evan Engram.
I was a big fan of his when he came out of college. His rookie year, he was kind of like the Darren Waller last year. And then he's just bitten me in the ass over and over and over with injuries. And when I think of Evan Engram, I have 2 words, and that is Caden Smith. And that is his backup, and that is who I'm drafting in the end of all of this best balls in tight end premium leagues, because it's just a matter of time before Engram goes down. And Caden Smith actually played pretty well towards the end of the season when Engram was there. Engram just doesn't get hurt. He gets hurt for long periods of time. Like, he rarely misses one game. And sometimes it's like, oh, he's going to be out for 2 weeks, and then it's 5 weeks. I don't know. You know, some guys just, bodies are built differently, and unfortunately his appears to be one that has a hard time staying healthy. He has a world of talent. If he could stay healthy, he would be in the discussion with Kittle and Kelsey. But unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be able to. And right now, there are a lot of good young tight ends. So, maybe grabbing a second and getting what you can out of Engram helps. But also, fantasy football roster spots are so important. To have this guy sitting there for 3 or 4 weeks really, really could hurt you. So I have not picked him yet this year. I don't know that I will. I think I'm a scorned lover. He's burned me a couple too many times.
Right, and I haven't been in that camp. This year I am, only because of the value factor of it, and I'm all right with that. But you do bring up a good point here. Do you draft that second tight end? And in most instances, I don't. And I'm like, okay, I'll deal with it on the waiver wire because I'm always a hound on the waiver wire anyway. But if you are going after one of these guys and you are concerned with injuries, hey, Hayden Hurst is right there. You might have to double tap and go after someone like a Hayden Hurst who gets now the Austin Hooper role, so we could expect a good amount of targets for him in that pass-heavy scheme that they have in Atlanta. And that's someone that I'm a little bit worried about by the time we hit right at the beginning of September. I'm wondering just how much he's going to be moving up draft boards. Does that concern you at all? Because we're kind of forced to keep our drafts as close to the start of the season as possible because of COVID-19.
Yeah, and definitely. And Hurst has been a guy that I love to grab around that area. You've waited, and you still get probably a guy who's going to be a great tight end. So I'm definitely prioritizing him over Engram. I've drafted him several times. And you can do Engram and you can do the waiver wire. If you're in a 12-team league, figure everyone's not going to take 2. And there are a lot of guys with a lot of potential that we don't know if they're going to break out. I mean, is Dallas Goedert getting drafted? Is Eric Ebron getting drafted? Going to Pittsburgh, a team that throws a lot, he could have some value. We've talked about Jack Doyle several times. Ian Thomas is finally getting his shot in Carolina. Who knows? Greg Olsen, even going to Seattle, they throw to the tight end all the time. If he's got a little bit in the tank, he could, and he's going to be on the waiver wire. So you can take Engram this year. I think there's going to be some surprises at tight end, and I don't think everyone in a 12-team league does take 2 tight ends. You can, I think this year more than ever, you can play the waiver wire a little bit on tight end, but it's still very dangerous. I love the potential of a lot of these players, but we know they're not all going to hit.
Right, and I don't like that feeling of just taking a shot in the dark for a starter. That's the problem. And if you wait, and I've been burned by this before. I mean, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, there was one year he was on Jacksonville, and I said, ooh, I'm getting the best value tight end ever. He gets hurt, and then that's it. And now I'm on the waiver wire for the next few weeks trying to find someone and striking out a little bit. That's why when it comes to waiting on the tight ends, just how low will you go? You mentioned Ian Thomas. I have one team where I waited way too long and it completely destroyed my tight end strategy, that my tight ends are Ian Thomas and Greg Olson right now. So my feelers are already out there. I got to fix this. You never know, though. Maybe Ian Thomas is a little bit more involved with Carolina, but that's right there. I don't like that unsettling feeling.
Me neither.
For bench spots, fine. For bench spots, I will take those dart throws. Rookie receivers, fine, I'll go after it. But when it comes to starters, price, and that's where someone like maybe even a CeeDee Lamb, who I love his talent, he's kind of the exception there. But that's why when it comes to someone like on the running back side, like a Swift or a Jonathan Taylor, I have not drafted either one of those guys yet, Ryan. I mean, overall, rookies, how are you feeling in general? Are you completely turned off by them, or do you think, well, they will figure it out even without the OTAs?
I mean, I'm not completely turned off, but I'm kind of like, it's like 3 a.m. and it's almost last call, and you're looking to I'm talking like Adam Ronis now. But no, I'm kind of against them as well. I haven't drafted Taylor either. I do think at some point he's going to take over, but I think it's going to take a little while. I think it's going to take a few weeks, maybe even a month, maybe 6 weeks. So the no preseason.
Can I tell you what my problem with that is? And I've mentioned this on shows before. My problem with people are like, oh, by week 10, he's going to be great. We may not make it to week 10. What
That's very true.
What if by week 10, let's just say, because this happens, it's COVID season as well. You never know who's going to be gone because of it. Let's just say week 10 comes and I'm 3-6. That's a lot of ground to make up for this running back who I'm drafting in the 3rd round just to start producing at a high level. That's my one problem. And I mean, can you say the same with Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Kind of. But here's the thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. No Damian Williams now, and all the other backs that they have there, I'm not as concerned with. I'm not saying that Marlon Mack is going to completely outshine, but I went through this a little bit last year with Miles Sanders, Ryan. And that's why, luckily for me, I got Jordan Howard in 1 or 2 of the leagues because I had Sanders everywhere. But it took a little while for Sanders to get going, and an injury to Jordan Howard.
Yeah, and that's I'm the same way, and that's why I've kind of not taken any of it. Now Clyde Edwards-Helaire stock is through the roof. You have to take him in like the first 7 picks, and that's a little nuts to me. You run the risk of waiting too far behind. Miles Sanders, it did take a really long time, and it was great once he finally got there. He was fantastic, but you might have been out of it. And my problem with these kids is their draft stock. Like you said, you have to take Jonathan Taylor in the 3rd or 4th round. You have to take DeAndre Swift in like the 5th or 6th round. There's really good wide receivers around that spot, and if you'd already taken starting running backs that are going to help you most of the year, you wouldn't have to be doing this. I mean, are you feeling good about J.K. Dobbins as your 3rd running back or 2nd running back? As I'm not.
No, 3rd running back, a little bit better, but guarantees start every single week. I'm not feeling good about that. I have 1 share of J.K. Dobbins thus far. As you can tell, I've been in a lot of drafts, whether it's been best ball or redraft, Ryan. That's because it's the pandemic, and I'm bored, and I love drafting. Who doesn't love drafting? So that's why it's been a lot of key best balls, so I'm not going to be in over my head with 20 leagues that I'm going to have to set lineups every single week, but I've been keeping track. I have Dobbins in 1 league as my 4th running back, which I'm fine with. 3rd running back, I'm still decently all right with, but then I have to hope there's no injury, or I have to protect him by grabbing another running back. That's the way I see it. Mark Ingram is still there. So, yeah, man, that's the thing. When I'm in those first few rounds, though, I'm looking for the proof that I've already seen, and that's why, for me, I don't have any shares of Clyde Edwards-Helaire at this point.
No, I almost drafted. I had the 11th pick in a draft the other day, and I considered it. I really did think about it, and I'm like, nah, just – because, I mean, like you said, we've been in so many drafts. I'm like, hey, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. Just be true to yourself. Be who you are. And I can't remember who I picked, but I didn't end up picking him. I still think it's bonkers to take him in the 1st round. I saw someone tweet yesterday, like, take him 1st overall. I'm like, he has to be better than we think to return value. Why would you pick him 1st overall?
I mean, I can't do that. I can't take him over McCaffrey, Saquon. I can't put that in my mindset. As much as I want to, I can't see into the future. I don't know. I mean, yes, there have been rookie running backs that have exploded right from the get-go, and they've been great. However, in this situation, especially with COVID, and again, COVID makes me want to draft a little bit more on the safe side. It just does. Because think about it. You have to this year have the mindset, and I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm a realist. you're going to lose some of your players. It's going to happen. It's not the same old Fensty injury speech with the roulette wheel that I talk about every year. Round and round it goes, and it could land on your number. Take away your first round pick. It can happen. Now we have that plus a second roulette wheel, which is a very fast COVID wheel. And that is going to be spinning a lot, Ryan. And that's why I'm trying to protect myself and build on the safer side when it comes to fantasy football this year.
Yeah, but we don't even really know what the safer side is, because you don't know what guy's going to go out there and have 150 yards and a touchdown and go to the bar with his buddies after the game like Zach Plesac just did. I like to believe. I'm going to be the optimist here. I like to believe that these guys are all going to make the right choices. I know they're not going to, and of course in football, like we said on Friday, there's no not touching each other. So, if someone makes the wrong decision, it could easily quickly spread. I saw something where they might play some Friday and Saturday games this year to spread out the schedule a little bit. I sure hope that everything goes right. It would be a rough time to not have fantasy football, because it's become a 12 month a year kind of thing. I know obviously the season is those 4 months, but fantasy football is a 12-month cycle at this point.
Yes, and for all those that are playing fantasy football from the casual standpoint, it is not a 3-day-a-week job if you want to win rings. That's how it is. Let your league mates check their teams once every so often during the week and not be active on waivers every single week. They'll lose, you'll win. And that's what it's all about, Ryan. And final tight end, though, I want to ask you about Mike Gesicki. And that's because he's going to start moving up. If he hasn't already, he's going to start moving up very quickly. And that's because the Miami opt-outs. That's what it is. And I understand they got Chester Rogers, so they are trying to fill gaps. But Mike Gesicki already had some interest from some of our staff at fantasyalarm.com. But now with no Hearns, no Wilson, he's going to start moving up. Where do you stand, and what's your price point for Mike Gesicki?
I think he's definitely moving up, and I already had him pretty. I was definitely targeting him this year. I think he's right after the Hayden Hurst. For me, I have him in front. I'd rather have him than either Rams tight end. I think those two are going to vulture each other, and I think that especially Tyler Higbee's value, I think to me, is out of control. But I think the Miami offense is going to be better despite those two opt-outs. Neither one of those guys are that great. I mean, they're both okay, but that certainly frees up some targets. Chester Rogers is no great thrill. I think Gesicki is a real talented guy. I think he's got a ability to stretch the field, which doesn't happen all that often in the tight end. I think he could be one that really takes the next step this year and becomes a real solid player.
Yeah, that's going to be tough for me, Ryan, when I have to choose between, because now that his draft stock has started to move up and it will continue, Engram or Gesicki, that's going to be one of my hardest decisions. So I'm just going to have to pretty much make it on the spot. Go with your gut sometimes. Get the players you want, even if that means drafting a player, especially in these times. If there's a player that you've just done your research and you see, I want this guy, draft him around the head of where you're seeing him go in average draft positions. You have to go after the players that you want. You can follow Ryan Hallam at Fighting Chance on Twitter. Always a great follow. And fantasyalarm.com. Me at Fensty Sports. Catch me on Alarm After Hours, weeknights, 1 a.m. Eastern, the late night. They say the early bird gets the worm. That's wrong. It's all about the late nights. And we are always here to help you, fantasyalarm.com. Get the guide. Always dominate. Draft with dominance and confidence. Ryan, it's always a pleasure hanging with you, my man.
Can't wait to find out when we're going to do this again, Fensty.
Yes, soon enough. Could be tomorrow, Ryan. You never know. You never know. The dynamic duo of Hallam and Fensty, and all of you joining us as well, because like I always say, your family is always with you. Can't spell family without F-A. Fantasy Alarm. We thank John Impemba, the glorious one himself, for producing this live stream. I almost said podcast, Ryan, but that's because you were on the Family Times podcast that drops every single week towards the end of the week on fantasyalarm.com. Always dominate. No other option. Just win. Let's do it together. That's what family's all about.